A while back, you may remember that I made a video saying that Madam Web's post-credits scene was going to tell us that Spider-Man was going to be in Venom 3. That's okay. We live, we learn, we grow. Okay? People are wrong about stuff every day. Are they this wrong? Sometimes. Sometimes they are. Hey, what's up? My name is John Bonjour. I'm an artist and a film enthusiast. I have drawn some art and I would like to enthuse in a very specific way about some film. Today we are talking about Madam Web. Just a disclaimer, I love everything that Sony is doing with their Spider-Man related universes. Not, just to be clear, because they're good on any conceivable level, but because it's just hilarious to me that we keep letting them do this. Like, I don't know how they keep thinking that this is going to be a good idea and make good movies, and they just keep being wrong. Like, I understand the thought behind the Venom movies. I get where they were like, okay, we got something here, we can work with that. No shade on the Venom movies. Are they dumb and kind of bad? Yes, but I love them. I love them for that. When they chose to do a movie about Morbius, the living vampire, it was about when I went, all right, not sure you know what you're doing here. I don't know if you know what's happening. And then that bombed because it was a terrible, just awful film. And then they got the writers for that to do this for some reason. Like, did they think that it wasn't the writing that was the problem here? And it wasn't even one of those overlap things where they didn't have time between one and the other to change creative teams. Morbius came out and then this was written. So, like, what? Were you just lazy? Did you just not want to hire somebody else? Is this a nepotism situation? What is happening here? Honestly, that's my general takeaway for this movie. What happened? How did this why did we let this happen? I'm gonna go non-spoiler for as long as I possibly can, and then I'm just gonna have to get into some stuff. But before we do, let's talk about some of the good. There's some good in here. There really is. There's some interesting moments, some interesting characters. I think the idea of this, like, spider guy being a slasher villain going around and killing people, and this other character that can kind of see the future and change that, I genuinely think that that's a good idea. I think that there's a lot that you can do with that. And honestly, the movie does a lot with that idea. It does a lot to kind of play in this space of what those two forces would do and how they would interact with each other. On that level, I think that this works reasonably well. Not awesome, not great, but it works in like a Final Destination, early 2000s horror movie kind of way. I genuinely think that that's good. Some of the effects are pretty good. Not gonna lie, they did a fairly solid job. They are very many of them kind of covered by this weird glistening sort of moving camera motion thing, but they look pretty good. There's several shots with the villain, Ezekiel Sims, where he's running around a city on the walls, where, first of all, he doesn't have webs, so I kind of had the thought, like, how did he get up there? Like, did he run all the way up that building just to run around that building? Because we do not see him jump in such a way that would make me think that he could go from building to building. It's more like car to car. So it's really more of a side note, but there are some shots with him that just kind of, they look good. They're very Spider-Man-ish, and I think that that's good. It did, I will say, kind of make me think, gosh, you could have done made a Spider-Man movie, huh? Sony, you could have made this like a movie about Spider-Man with Spider-Man in it, because you have the rights to that, sort of. No? Alright, that's fine. Hell, I would even take a Spider-Woman movie. Like, I liked what they were doing. That's the other thing that I think works about this movie. Some of the characters are really solid. I think that, as much as I don't think Dakota Johnson did a particularly good job in this, I think her character is interesting and solid. I would actually watch more Madam Web, which feels insane to me. I liked her character. I liked her arc. I thought that they did a pretty good job bringing that all together, making it important and the focal point. I think some of the Spider-Women are good. Sydney Sweeney she's great as Julia Carpenter, who's just a snotty little rich kid. I think that she plays that really well. I liked when she was kind of torn between the other two characters and didn't want to offend anybody and just wanted to be nice. She's fun. She's a fun character to watch. As far as the other two Spider-Women go in the movie, you have Isabela Merced and Celeste O'Connor. They're both fine. I'm not loving that one of their characters is just math, just person who can do math. I don't think that's a particularly strong character. I feel like those two kind of end up playing more or less the same character, and then they just kind of differentiate the one with having basic knowledge of math, which I think is dumb. I think that's a dumb way to do that, but they're fine. They do a good job. They play it well. They have decent chemistry. And then add in Dakota Johnson as our Cassandra Webb. I think that Quio? Can't be Quio. What is a group of four? What do you call that? Just like a gaggle? Squad? Yeah, squad works. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of surprised that they didn't give them a stupid nickname as a team. As far as the bad goes, without spoiling anything, most of it's bad. It's almost all bad. This is some of the worst writing I've ever seen, and then really, truly, some of the delivery of the lines here is genuinely rough. I like the core kernel of what these characters are. I like some of the character development. I like the way that they interact, but man, you got to see through a lot of garbage to get to that shining little nugget of this movie. It's so clear that this movie was originally written and intended to be something else, and then probably something else, and then probably a third other thing, and then now it's whatever mishmash of concepts this is. Depending on how close you've paid attention to some of the news around this movie, there have been a lot, like an inordinate number of articles about how many times Madam Web has changed. So like the original pitch of this movie was Ezekiel Sims going back in time a la Terminator to kill Mary Parker before she could have Peter Parker, the Spider-Man, who was going to kill him or stop him or whatever. And then that's obviously not what this movie is about. So what happened? Every passing moment of this movie, I'm just baffled by the decisions they make. We also heard, and this is the one that kills me, this was originally going to be set in the Amazing Universe. It was supposed to be about her protecting Peter Parker, who would eventually be played by Andrew Garfield. That Peter Parker. This was about Madam Web protecting him. And then it was later discussed that maybe it would be that Peter Parker in the world where this other kind of story is going on with these other Spider-Women. And then Sony did the thing that they do, apparently, just their running gag, I guess, of telling us that Spider-Man is going to be involved in a project and then being like, ha 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 ha, we got you. When you think we're going to zig, we zag. And when you think we're going to zag, we cut out Spider-Man from all of our projects. Granted, I understand that if you're going to set this movie in 2003, you can't have it be about the birth of a guy who's like 20 in 2014. Doesn't work that way. That's not how math works. And one of those characters would probably be able to tell you that. Unfortunately, they didn't get to that point when they were writing the script, so they were just like, people were saying that Venom feels like a 2000 superhero movie. What if we just set it in the 2000s? That's smart. We could do that. And they just not a single person did any of the math to try to figure out if that made just even an ounce of sense, which I think is hilarious and I really, really, truly love. This is what I'm talking about when I say I love what Sony is doing. I cannot believe, it is unfathomable to me that you would dump this much money into this movie and not even think about whether or not it made sense. Not even for one fleeting second do you think, does the script that we have for this movie that's going to cost us many millions of dollars, does that make sense? Is that a thing that we can do? I mentioned in the good that some of the visual effects were really solid. Some of them are also not really solid. Some of them are bad to the bone. I like the costume design that they gave these three Spider-Women, but they did something to it. They did a horrible, horrible job of making it look good. The design is solid. I did the art based on some of the design photos, some of the just like set photos of these three Spider-Women's characters, and apparently they just decided that didn't matter anymore because we're just going to cover it in CGI and make it look yucky. I just can't handle it anymore. I'm going to talk about some spoilers now. Here's your warning. The Spider-Women are not in this movie. They are not. They are technically shown on screen, but at no point are they even given spider powers. This is why I'm upset, because if you didn't tell us that these three Spider-Women were going to be in the movie, if they weren't so heavily involved in the marketing, in the one single trailer that Sony put out, if they weren't a huge part of that push, I really wouldn't have had a problem with it, because it's like, oh yeah, weird, cool. You put a couple of little hints toward what was going to come. You showed us a cool, neat little design, couple of cool sequences. Great. Was it all in a future flash forward? Yes, but that doesn't matter. Like, at least we got to see it. That's neat. But when you tell us that the whole movie is going to be that, when you market this movie as being about that and with them in it, you can't just not have them in it. You can't just choose to not have them in it. You can't. This is the same thing they did with Rhino in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I'm telling you, I think it's the same thing that they're going to do with Rhino in Kraven the Hunter. They show us in the trailer some big action set piece with Rhino, and then turns out that's actually the end of the movie, and you don't see any more than you saw in the trailer. Literally every frame of these Spider-Women in costume easy in the trailer. That is not an exaggeration. That is not a joke. You can't just lie about your movie, Sony. You can't just pretend like it's gonna be about that when it's not. And I understand you had to market it for the superhero crowd because really, at its heart, this is not inherently a superhero movie. Until the end of the movie, in which case it becomes a deeply superhero movie in not a great way, but we'll get to that. This isn't like a superhero movie. This is a supernatural slasher movie with some weird Spider-Man pastiche placed over it, which I'm fine with. I think that part works, like I said, pretty well. But when you market it as a superhero movie and it's not a superhero movie, it's a little bit jarring, Sony. It's a little bit jarring. And if you just put out another trailer, it's crazy to me that you only put out one trailer, but when you put out one trailer, you're standing on that one leg. If you'd put out another one that focused on some of the more slashery elements, maybe this wouldn't be a problem. But it is, because you guys, once again, didn't think through your plan. I understand that some people don't connect with this energy. I really do. I get why you would just say it's a bad movie. Why would I go see it? As far as I'm concerned, that's why you should go see it. This isn't like a bad movie that's hard to watch. This is a bad movie that is so watchable because at every turn I'm wondering, how did they do this? Why did we let them do this? We could stop them probably. Somehow we could at least stop going to see these movies. But the problem is they're so wildly bad that I can't stop seeing them. I really am obsessed with this. The way that this movie ends with Dakota Johnson in the most disgusting Elektra-looking costume I have ever seen in my life. Like force projecting herself out into the world with these three Spider-Women who, once again, and I can't stress this enough, how do they become Spiders characters? How does that happen? We're not given any clues to that. There's never, are they all bitten by Ezekiel Sims' spider somehow? Does she just shuffle them into his weird little laboratory apartment and just one by one, okay, you get bit by the spider, you get bit by the spider, you get bit by the spider, everybody gets bit by the spider. And in a more insane way, are they three separate origin stories? Are there three bespoke spiders that bite these people? And how do you show us that they're going to be Spider Women and then not even vaguely, hand-wavingly hint at how that's going to happen? Speaking of vague hand-waving, I understand that this was originally something else, so there's probably some scenes that they had to like reshoot or recut, probably more likely. But man, it is so awkward when they're like, what's the name of your baby? I don't know. I guess we'll figure that out later. And they put it in as like it's going to be this Easter egg. But the problem is, if you have any just even passing Spider-Man knowledge, you know the name of the baby, and it's not that exciting. It's like, oh, cool, a Peter Parker that we don't know. That's the problem. Once you've disconnected from this Peter Parker, it's just a Peter Parker. Which maybe in a pre-Spider-Verse kind of world, that would make sense. That would be an interesting tease where you'd be like, ooh, who's gonna play this new Spider-Man? But I don't think that they're ever gonna come back to this. I really don't. In much the same way that they're never gonna touch on Morbius again. And B, I just don't. It doesn't matter to me because like when Spider-Verse comes out, you're like, yeah, it's another Peter Parker. There's always going to be another Peter Parker. There's 100,000, there's millions of Peter. There's infinite Peter Parkers. It's not an interesting tease to be like, ooh, we have a Peter Parker. That's only an accomplishment for you, Sony, because apparently you just are dead set on not putting a Spider-Man in your movies, which is insane. Now, I understand maybe that's some contractual obligation with Marvel. Great. You have 100,000 other Spider-Men. Like, choose Ben Reilly, choose Spider-Woman, choose Spider-Gwen. Just do literally anything. Do anything that makes any sense whatsoever. But no, instead of that, we're getting El Muerto. We're getting El Muerto. And Kraven the Hunter without a Spider-Man, without Venom. Just a guy. Just a guy the Hunter. It may sound like I'm upset at Sony right now, but I am not. I am elated. Whoever is making these decisions, never change. Never change ever. Unless you're going to make good Spider-Man movies, in which case change pretty drastically. I don't know how much more I could say about this movie. It's horrible. Like, it really is truly just drop dead awful. I will say, I think it's more entertaining than Morbius. I'll give it that. Like, I think that this has more going for it than Morbius did, and more, at least concepts, at least something to kind of go off of. I can see where they thought we should make this movie, because I'm sure in somebody's mind this was going to be a huge success and we'd want to see 3 individual movies about 3 individual Spider-Women or one sequel with all of them together. not saying I wouldn't watch it, but I don't think that there's going to be a whole lot of clamoring for that to happen. I just don't see that as a priority for people. Maybe I'm wrong. Who knows? Maybe Madam Web is going to make $1 billion. Do I think so? I would be shocked. I would be blown away. But at least I can say that this is a crazy movie, and I kind of recommend seeing it in a theater just because it's just straight up baffling. One last thing, and I'm not going to harp on this for too long. Why would there not be a post-credit scene? You put a Spider-Verse post-credit scene in Venom. It had nothing to do with the movie. Why not pitch one of your other projects? Give us a scene from Kraven the Hunter. Now, theory, perhaps because Kraven the Hunter is quite bad as well. But on the off chance that it's not, put a scene from that. And even if it is, put a scene from that in there and be like, hey, maybe you want to go see our next movie. And now that I'm thinking about it, after this movie, I don't think most people's first thought is going to be, how can I get more of this? So maybe they made the right call. Maybe that was a good decision. This movie is incredibly bad, and I highly, highly, highly recommend going to see it in theaters. It's just such a wonderful time. Thank you for watching this video and checking out my channel. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts on movies, TV shows, comics, Madam Web, other webs, just various webs, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and comment down below what you'd like me to review next, or do none of those things because I am not your dad. Oh, and while I have you, would you just take a second and read my comic, Edge of Border Town? It's on my website, johnbonart.com. We are done with the first 2 chapters of the book, and I think it's really good, and I really hope that you enjoy it.